Welcome, everybody, to the Swiss Army Man podcast. This is episode number 25. With me today is one of my dream guest lists. I made a list of 10 people when I started this podcast that I wanted on here, and this man was the first name on that list. He is a good friend, and I'll go through some of his accolades. He has 3 full-length records, just recorded his 4th, or in the process of recording his 4th, multiple EPs, and a national touring musician, and then also does a lot of cool stuff with I guess it would be a nonprofit. I don't know what funding the future is, but a lot of cool stuff. Immensely awesome person, great human being, one of my favorite people in the world, Mr. Carter Hulsey. How's it going?
Hello. It's nice to be here, man. Yeah, like I said when we were talking just a second ago, I've listened. You and I have been friends forever. I've listened to the podcast. Yeah. So I'm super thankful to be here, and yeah, this is awesome.
I'm super happy to have you on. I really mean that. So I made a guest list of 10 people that I wanted. They were my dream guest list. You were number 1, and my brother was number 2. And then I had a couple other people, but I've gotten my brother on. I've had Jeff Tice, who was the guy right before you. He was one of them. Brant Tobler. So you are the 4th, I believe, of that guest list that has been on the show. So
hell yeah, dude.
So yeah,
yeah.
So awesome. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't typically mention you in some form or fashion. And that's mostly due to the fact that I have lyrics of yours tattooed on my arm. And people ask me about it almost every day. So
that's awesome, man.
I'm constantly telling people about how awesome your music is. So.
I appreciate that so much. Thank you.
So I mentioned it in the intro. You just are in the process. I guess you recorded. I don't know if you're trying to figure out what songs will go on the record or adjustments or whatnot, but you just recorded your 4th full length.
Yeah. So we've recorded 11 songs, and then kind of took a break because I'm also for the nonprofit you mentioned, Funding the Future. I'm also building a, for lack of a better word, a television studio in my basement. So we recorded 11 songs. Now we're taking a couple weeks off to finish this recording. We actually I smell terrible, and I'm glad you can't see it or smell it through the camera because we've been working all morning. Right when I get done with this interview, I'll go straight back downstairs and keep going. And we're recording some tonight and tomorrow, like some live broadcast stuff. So, so yeah, we took a couple week break, and then I'll head back into the studio probably next week or the week after to do some more stuff.
Well, that's super awesome. So I know you're recording that with Gooding, who recorded your last record.
Yeah.
He's an awesome guy. I've met him a few times while you guys were out on tour. With the whole pandemic going on, obviously that had to be a little bit different for you guys recording, and then as well as obviously part of the reason why I'm assuming you're doing the television studio thing is to be able to in a sense tour the record early on. So how has that been a shift in how this process has gone compared to previous?
Yeah. So, recording wise, it's been different just because some people in Gooding's family, we just had to make sure that there was no way we were getting anybody sick. So everybody got tested before they came in the studio. We had a plastic wall in between Gooding and all the guests, and we wore masks the whole time. And I don't know. It was tough. And I tell people, with that, people arguing about whether or not to wear a mask and whatever. It's I just recorded for weeks and we wore masks the whole time and it sucked, but it wasn't that bad. It's it was different, but it wasn't that bad. I'm not saying whatever, but it's just that's what we did. And it was inconvenient, but it was fine. It wasn't that big of a deal. And I was happy. We were happy to do it, to do it as safe as possible for Gooding's family. And Kevin, Kevin, but Kevin does all my photos, all my video stuff. And it plays drums. Kevin's been, my buddy for a long time. He documented the whole process. So I think it's cool too, because they'll be kind of it's like a time capsule almost of what it was like to record in 2020. So yeah, it was cool, man. Like I said, every guest, separated by plastic. We had there's some guests doing vocals right now. Erin O'Neill out in Los Angeles, she's recording at Home Cinnamon. Matt Thiessen from Reliant K is doing vocal stuff at his house right now. sending that in. So it's been cool to, just some people came in, got tested. We did that. Some people are able to just, they got the setup, they can record at home and send in stuff. So, and like kudos to Gooding. And he's just, super flexible, and him and I wrote a ton of the songs together, and he's playing so many instruments on the record. So it's just cool. It's COVID, but we got through it, and we're not on tour right now, so we're building a studio in the basement. It's just, you're just figuring it out.
That's super awesome, and something I actually admire a lot. So most of the people that I've had on this podcast, I've had a couple of friends that do different things outside of the like art world, but like my brother's an artist. I've had 2 stand-up comedians one of the stand-up comedians is also an artist, a visual artist. You guys seem to have this like resiliency of like being able to like, because you are your own boss and you made your own way by the things that pop into your brain essentially. Like that's an impressive thing for anybody. Especially like someone who like me, who I've delved in all of those categories. I've been an artist. I played music. I've done stuff. Never as like a professional into the level of you guys, but like it's something where like when something like this hits, you guys are the first people I think of, like, because I'm like, oh, like this is gonna put a damper on them, and they live the way they do, being able to go out and perform for people. So you and my brother and all them people were the people I thought of first, and so I'm glad you guys have found a way to work around what's going on.
Dude, and I think it's out of necessity. I've known you a long time, and like you said, you're an artist too. You create things. You have things inside of you that you're nothing's going to stop you from getting that out, whether it's you singing and playing that on the guitar, or, however you choose to do it. We're like cockroaches, man, for lack of a better thing. Like, you can't kill us. Like, I did an interview the other day and I was like, find a more resilient group of people than creative people. Like a couple of years ago, Spotify came out and they're like, you can't even sell your music anymore. Like, good luck. And it's like, all right, we'll figure it out. Like, still going, man. I think, again, you know this, but if you have something that you need to say, you're going to figure out how to say it. If you want to put something into the world that you feel is helpful to other people, or makes other people and yourself at the same time feel less alone, you're going to figure out how to do that. So we've been doing.
That's all, and it's awesome. And I love music so much, and obviously podcasts, and I drive around a lot for my day for. I know you said you listen, but like I'm not allowed to say what I do for a living. So like I do drive around, and I'm by myself a lot. So stuff that's like in my ears, like is stuff that lives with me. Like, you're listening to your music or listening to a podcast or stuff like that. So like the aspect of it that I had, my job hasn't changed during this entire thing. I wear a mask obviously all day, but I am out in public doing the same thing. So it's like, in a way, like you guys have all kind of come along with me to like be like my my like buddies while I'm going through that whole thing. And it's like, so what you guys do is very incredibly important. And that's kind of like leads to a sort of like a next question is a lot of your records, for me personally, I know have hit at certain times of like, I know exactly where I was when I first listened to most of them. Like I was going through a divorce for one of them. The last record, I was moving. I was literally throwing stuff into a giant dumpster. We were getting ready to move out of our house. My wife was 8 months pregnant. We were getting ready to move into this house. So like I have like these like moments where like the first time I heard like L Train, I remember like where I was at, like and stuff like that. So those kind of things. What does it feel like to be that for somebody, even if it's on a smaller scale or a bigger scale, like having fans come up to you after shows or saying like, hey, like this song means this to me. Is there anything, does that ever get old? I'm assuming it probably doesn't, but like it probably seems, or does it have a weight to it? Does it feel like, like, how does that feel? I guess is the question.
That's such a, that's such a great question because, I feel like like when you say, does it have a weight to it? It does, but like all around, like there's mass to the whole process. And I think, you get it, in a different way too, because like, you are a creative person, but you also, like to truly just enjoy it, to be a support,
Yeah.
So it is nice to hear you say those things. It's nice for, certain songs to stick out, and it can take you, back to some place. And, because a lot of times with this job, this, creating something, it's lonely. It's a lonely process. It's sitting up here in this room. It is, um, practicing the guitar. It is reading constantly. It's just all these lonely things to, you know, to get you to a point where you're in a position to create and ready to create. And then also, when you start putting it down, when you start writing, when you start, um, figuring out what you're saying, a lot of times, and with most of the songs on this next record, they just kind of happened. And over time, as you look back, you slowly kind of figure out more and more what they're about. They reveal yourselves even, to me. But, um, it's that weight too, is in like, how much do I feel comfortable putting on this piece of paper right now?
Yeah.
And because that's hard, just writing it, like physically writing down what you're thinking or going through, or, because you and I have had, we've gone through similar things,
Yeah.
So actually writing that down and then getting into the studio and being like, okay, I guess I'm going to actually record this too. So there were some songs definitely on Haunt Me, that were like that. There's this new record. I don't know what we're going to call it yet, but it's a I hope, for me though, it's a nice transition from Haunt Me into kind of present day here. There's some tough heartbreak songs on there, and there's some loneliness, but there's also, I feel as though the record grows towards like hope, and it's I don't know, I'm super proud of it. There's some moments that are hopeful and fun and happy. So it's nice to have that on the record too.
That's awesome to hear too, because I the one thing, so like when people, like I said, people ask me all the time, it's the weird thing, it's the weird dynamic for me, of because people do ask me all the time about what is written on my arm, and then I explained where it's from. And the reason I asked that question is, so for me, the song that I have tattooed on me, every time you play it, if I'm there, usually you try to play it, and you usually preface it with, I'm gonna sing one of the saddest songs I've ever wrote. And for me, that's a song that's hopeful. So I take it in a different way, and which is part of the reason why, like, I got the first verse tattooed on my arm. And it is sad when you read it, but it's also like, it's all how you interpret it. So how does that make it for you? Like when you go in and you have a personal song and you know what this song means, but then you go play it live, and you've played in front of some pretty big audiences, and intimate clubs and all that kind of stuff, and someone comes up and says that song is, I don't know, like you hear it all the time with like people are saying like, oh, that was like our wedding song, and we have that or whatever. And then like like I've heard like artists be like, that song's about like the time I was like addicted to drugs and like almost killed myself. You know what I mean? Like those, like, so it's like weird how people can take two different things and almost like perceive them differently. So like that for you, have you ever had a song where you're like, I don't know how people see that and that, like, or is like,
Yeah.
while they're talking to you, and then and then does somebody telling you about their perception of the song ever like shift your view on the song for later times while you're playing it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I I think, mm, you know, I think, songs, are kind of like a magic trick,
Yeah.
in that it's, I enjoy Penn and Teller, and I like that they tell you how they do their tricks, but once they tell you how they do it, or exactly what's going on, it loses something for you. One of my favorite working writers, Corey Brannon, he has this line that says, "Lily, I guess the best trick is to see the magic once you've seen the wires." So, and I equate that to songwriting or anything creative. Like, um, I think it's our job as artists to kind of be careful to I guess, it's personal. Everybody can do whatever they want, but I don't want to tell somebody exactly what the song's about because I want it to mean something for them. Like you said, what to make is hopeful for you. For me, that came out of like a darker place. So, when he says the best trick is to see the magic once you've seen the wires, if I have songs that I love, I will purposefully not try to figure out how to play them, even like super simple songs. Phoebe Bridgers alludes to that. I feel like on her new record, she has a line where she talks about, learning something and then you kind of, it loses something for you once you learn it. So, I think, it's a personal choice for each person that's, a creative, but I like to not completely come out and say it. And, I liked for my songs too. That's another job I feel as though I have is when I'm writing something, it doesn't have to be universal. I'm not trying to write a pop hit that everybody's going to, love, but I'm trying to make it as open-ended as possible that enough people can relate to it. And maybe it helps them feel a little less alone.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you've succeeded in that. So that's, the verse I actually have on my arm is like, literally, it was one of those things where I was like, it was actually coming out of like my divorce and finding new love with my wife, who our first date happened to be a show of yours.
Yeah.
So like, and I had that, that was like, it's, while it's negative or the wording of it is kind of dark. It is like, for me, it's a reminder of like, you've been there and now we're going towards light, you know what I mean? So like that's pretty awesome. And that actually, when you just said what you just said about the magic and the wires and all that kind of stuff, it leads me to one of the questions that I ask usually my comedian friends, but it also, I think, in a way translates to musicians as well. Is there does being a musician harm your relationship with listening to music? So like I say that with like comedians,
100%.
Whereas like when you know the math of like the joke, it's like, does it take you out of it? And usually they'll say something like some of them, yes, but then some people are just, they transcend the fact that how it's done, and it's just like, okay, it's still just boom. So I would assume
those people are better at it than I am.
Yeah.
There are. If I'm not at the point where I can like completely zoom out and not worry about how something's done,
Yeah.
That's such a great question. It's when I am driving like on tour, it's like all audiobooks pretty much. It's when somebody puts out something new, like I'm going to listen to it front to back. Like when Phoebe came out with her record, I listened to it front to back. Rustin Kelly comes out with Shape and Destroy the other day. I listened to that front to back. But I don't constantly have music on. I listen to like Phoebe and like Rustin Kelly or Corey, he put out some quarantine sessions. Like those are things I listen to because that's for me the top, where I'd love to get to, but that's who I'm reaching for is those artists, those writers. I hold them in such a high regard, but I also, try to listen to whatever comes out. Taylor Swift's, new acoustic stuff, not 100% my thing, but I listened to it. I listened to it front to back just to, I guess, make sure I'm keeping up with what's happening a little bit. You know what I mean? So I do listen to music, but I'm not going to go listen to Taylor Swift's new record 10 times to make sure to find something. I'm going to listen to it once, take what I need, and then probably right back to listen to an audiobook.
Yeah. No, I always find that fascinating because I think that's so it goes back to something actually you said to me. I think it was when your first record was coming out and you were talking about like not a goal, but like you were like I gave you a compliment, and I think you have a hard time taking compliments sometimes. Which I think is most of us. But like, I was saying how like, because I was around all day and you were doing something else. And
yeah, we released a note in your pocket together.
Yeah,
Yeah, tag team event. We did that.
and so you were playing guitar for somebody else, and but all day it was Bamboozle Fest, and you were like, there was a bunch of bands, and I remember you played 2 songs. And I was around, and people had saw us like talking or whatever, and so like I had multiple people come tell me that like that entire tour, like you were like one of the most impressive people that they saw the entire tour, like over and over again, like other musicians, and so like for you to get like that kind of praise or me, like that's kind of the similar thing. I think people enjoy listening to your stuff, and even though they're in the game themselves, and so for me, kind of going back to what you said, which intrigued me, was you said Matt from Reliant K is going to be on the record, and I know that you were a fan of that band when so like how does that come full circle for you? Is that like I know obviously now you guys are probably friends because the Nashville scene and all that kind of stuff, but it's like that's does that feel like a cool nod to like past Carter?
100%. They say, never meet your heroes. For me, with Thiessen, that's 100% not true. He could not be more humble, could not be more just like, he's just a great dude. Like he in the first time I met him, I was like, hey, I'm a crazy big fan. I did that because you have to do that. So I did that. I was like, let's just get this out of the way, dude. Like, weird. I love everything you've done. Like, huge fan here. And he was like, thanks. And then that was over. Like, that part was over. And we played a show together. We played at the Bluebird together, and he sang on some stuff right before we went on tour, and then he's singing on the record, and he's just a great guy. But yeah, I mean, it's you couldn't have told me 10 years ago that would happen, Yeah. So it's kind of like what happens in the next 10 years, but it's just, I don't know. It is really cool. Yeah. I'm thankful for it for sure.
That's a cool thing. I know when you said it immediately, I was like, I'm asking that question. That's a good comeback. And it actually leads perfectly into like one of the questions that I wrote down. Because you are and you've mentioned audiobooks, and I know you're a big reader. I know some of your lyrics have been inspired by movies as well, stuff like that. And then obviously you're a big music guy. So I have to ask one leading question, so that way I can ask this question: vinyl, tape, CD, or MP3? If you had your choice.
For sheer convenience, I will enjoy having the music on my phone.
Yeah.
But I know the correct answer is vinyl. No, I have a ton of vinyl. I listen to it. I enjoy it, but it's more listening to, for me personally, listening to music on vinyl is, I feel bad saying this, but it's kind of like decoration. It's like lighting incense in the room. It's just part of what's happening in the room.
Yeah.
If I want to truly experience something, I'm thankful for technology and the fact that I have these, headphones and can look, and I'm thankful for, if I really want to get invested into something. Yeah. I like having it on my phone. Now, sure, I wish for my new stuff, I wish everybody would just, close their eyes and put in some headphones and listen to it, not be on Reddit so vinyl still gives you that. I think, if my stuff only came out on vinyl, then someone would have to sit and physically listen to it and be a part of that experience. But it's not a reality. So
well, that's the cool thing about it, is about, right? Like, it's like, I can I literally have this still sealed. I have like 5 copies of this. So this is,
I don't have any more copies of that. That's amazing.
I'll send you one if you want.
I don't have any. That's awesome.
This one's still sealed. So I could literally open this up and pull the CD out. You know what I mean? Like, that's like, I think that's the whole thing for vinyl, is like, you're like, I'm like pulling it out, and it's like these big, I have a bunch of vinyl too, but I asked that question so that way I could ask this question properly. You get to put together a gift box to send back in time to 10 to 12-year-old Carter. In this box, you get 1 book, one piece of music. So for this case, you get to send him some MP3s. And then also one movie and a small piece of advice. What do you send and what advice are you giving to 10 to 12-year-old Carter?
Man, that's so great.
I figured this one would be like a stumper because you're a big reader, you're a big music person, and you. Which one did you think about first? Which one does your mind go to try to figure out first?
Man, shit. All right, 10 years ago. So this is 2010. This was we're post recession.
Oh no! Sorry, you're sending it to 10 to 12-year-old you.
Oh, okay.
So like as a like, hey, these are the things we're into. These things kind of shape your life.
Yep. The book would be On Writing by Stephen King. I read that book once a year just to remind myself. King is great. He's one of my favorite writers, but he's great because he knows what he's got a lane and he's aware of it. He kind of created his own.
Yeah.
But he does what he does. You roughly kind of know where you're headed when you open one of his books. But in this On Writing book, a memoir of the craft, he lets you know and also reminds you how much you have to come to writing with respect and grace, and it's just work.
Yeah.
Like it's just work. And you got to show up. So I would send that to myself at 10 or 12 to just be like, because at 10 or 12, I just started playing guitar, just started really thinking about that. It's like, all right, if you want to do this, start taking it seriously right now.
Yeah.
Music wise, what I would send to myself, wait, what was it? It was music. So there's a book On Writing.
So one book, one movie, one piece of music. So like, and I'll give you like you can do like if you want to do individual singles, we'll go with that too. But so you can expand that, or you can pick one CD, whatever, and then a small piece of advice that you would give.
The movie would be, let's see, 10-year-old Carter. I'd send him something like probably The Big Short. So yeah, he could maybe figure out what was going to happen and be ahead of everything. Wonderful movie. So I'd send The Big Short. Music wise,
I figured that would be the hardest one.
I don't know.
I'll give you a pass on that one. You don't have to answer it if you don't.
Well, I think I just send like individual songs. I think I send some songs that were like, make sure. I think it would go back to the book, On Writing. Like, make sure you're coming to this with respect, because there's a balance of inspiration and just showing up to go to work. So I would probably send. I'd just send some songs. A lot of them would be Corey Brannon songs because I mean, he is my favorite working writer. I'd send a lot of that. I'd send some of Phoebe's stuff. Again, some of Rustin's stuff. Gooding, I know him and I work together, but he's got he just released a record called Mayday, but he's got another batch of songs that he doesn't even have in it. He's recorded like 4 records during and he's only put out one so far, but maybe he's recorded 5 records. Anyway, he's got this other batch of songs that he sent me that we took a break from recording because of some COVID stuff, and we had to retest and yada yada. He sent me this batch of songs he'd just done, and this batch of songs caused me to write a few more songs. One of them made it to the record, so took a break, and so I would send myself that. And then just some classics. My parents were always listening to Van Morrison and Willie and Elton John. I would pick out a couple of those singles too and be like, you're going to hear this as at home, but
Yeah.
really listen to a couple of ththese. And then advice.
Doesn't have to be anything profound, but just like even like something small. Like,
Man, the older I get, the more I realize that the things that the people that loved me said, the advice that was given to me by people that loved me was almost always true.
Yeah.
And almost always right. And when you're young and when you're growing up, you don't take it like you should.
Nice.
Now looking back, almost all of it was true. So I would tell myself at 10 years old, hey, asshole, listen up. Your parents are going to tell you stuff. You're going to have some teachers tell you some stuff. You're going to have some friends tell you some stuff. Most of it's rooted in love and it's true. So
that's awesome. That's great advice. I'm going to show that portion of this to my 12 and 13-year-old daughters who think I'm the most dorky dad ever. No. It is weird though. I actually just had that conversation with a friend this morning about how because I used to play baseball at a high level, and my daughter wants to be a basketball player, and she wants to play in the WNBA. It's her dream, and I'm like, it's going to take a lot of work, and I don't think she always hears everything I have to say, because she's like, you're just dad, like whatever, like. She never saw the previous like younger me that was like a top level athlete and played really hard, so it's like it's funky, like that weird, like you get that stage and you're just like, I don't know, like I'm either whatever, like so since you said that was actually great advice, and it actually leads perfectly. Usually I do it at the end, but I'm going to do it here. My last interview was Jeff Tice. He's a stand-up comedian and a great illustrator. He makes amazing works of art. Like if you ever need CD cover done, maybe check him out.
That's awesome.
Like I gave him the compliment during that his art reminded me of the cover of Death Cab's Transatlanticism.
Yeah.
Like that's the feel it gives me. So his question was, and it plays perfect, so we're just going to do it here. What's the worst piece of advice you ever got from somebody? And did you know it in the moment, or did you have to do it to find out that it was worse?
Worst piece of advice I ever got.
So it could be advice that you were like, that is the dumbest thing ever, I'm never taking that. Or you were like, no, it's good advice, I'm going to take it. And then realized it was terrible later.
When I first started recording, I was probably 16 years old. A producer told me to never get into the recording side, to never invest, just solely invest time in writing. And I held on to that until a couple years ago. When because I was always like, I don't want to get bogged down by learning the recording process or learning what certain equipment does or yada, yada, yada. As I've started to learn that, though, I kick myself a little bit, because once you understand the process, once you're done writing the song and you start understanding the process of capturing it, once you know how a compressor works, once you know how a distressor works, once you know what exactly how EQs are, once you start to understand that, it opens up other possibilities, because going into the process, you can be creative in the recording process as well, instead of, for years I was just like, can you kind of make it? I couldn't be specific about what I was thinking in my head because I had no idea.
Yeah.
That art of recording. So I would, that was probably some bad advice I got.
Well, that's a easy, awesome question. So we'll take your question at the end. So we'll move on from that. I was going to say, speaking of that, do you remember, you're talking about terrible sounds and not being, that just reminded me of a show in Delaware that you did, that I was at, that had the worst feedback mic I've ever heard in my entire life.
Yes. And I kind of used it. I kind of played with it. I do remember that.
Yeah, that was when I vividly remember you picking up the stand and kind of slamming it to the ground too, in like a perfect form of like, it was, I think you were playing Long Black Veil at the moment, and you played it perfectly into the song, and it was like, that was when I was like, man, Carter's got the state. Like, that's the thing too, I guess, and actually that is a question on here. You're writing, and like, I can listen to your record on, and this is gonna be probably a total backhanded compliment, and I hope, and it doesn't mean to be, but a lot of the people that I've like given the record to, that have actually I've brought into shows that have gotten to see you, they're like, man, the record is so good, but like it's so elevated on stage. Like, is that something you've heard before, like, or anything like that?
All the time.
Like there is something about like mesmerizing about watching you perform. Like you're in it, you're feeling it, you're like,
Yeah.
it's amazing. So
Yeah.
that's meant to be a compliment, but also
No,
like
I
it's a
get
little
it.
backhanded. But like,
No, and you know that live aspect is, you know, the record you hear, you know, first of all, the record you're just experiencing audibly, you know,
yeah,
and you know it's usually full band, and you know, when you go to a show, it's cool because one, it's kind of stripped down usually, so you kind of get to hear like the original version of the song, and then you also get to, you know, you don't just hear it, but you're there with friends, and you know, people are physically there. People, you know, it's smell. There's a certain smell.
yeah,
There's so live just always has that advantage because you know you when you put a record out and somebody listens to it on their own time in their own space, I don't have any control over that. When somebody comes
yeah.
to a show, I do have some control over how they're going to hear the record, what I'm, you know, how I'm going to present it. You just have a lot more advantages live.
Yeah, it's one of those questions that I really wanted to ask because so even I've seen you live a bunch, but like even today I decided I wanted to go back and I listen to your records in my car all the time, and like sometimes I'm screaming at the top of my lungs yelling the lyrics. Sometimes it's just like I need it after like work. I need something to feel familiar.
Yeah.
But like even watching, I went and watched YouTube videos today of like performances of you, like, and even like through video, not even being in the room, like it gives me goosebumps, like watching you perform, because like there's something like you're so connected to it. Like I don't like I've never seen I've truly, this is a true, I've never seen a musical performer perform the way you perform, if that makes sense. Like and I've been, and it's wild because like for me, like I've been drinking a beer with you 3 seconds before you go on stage, and then you go up on stage, and it almost like for, I guess this is the question, but do you forget the crowd's there, or are you in channeling something internally? Like, are you in the place where you wrote that song, or are you in the room? Like it feels like almost like an out of body
Yeah,
experience, sort of sometimes.
man, it's probably a combination of all of them. You know, sometimes it's just you know that's why live is cool too, because it's kind of unpredictable, and you know the way I approach a set is it kind of just depends on my day or my week or where I'm at. You know, sometimes I'm up there and it's just thinking about when I wrote the song or you know whatever. Sometimes I'm up there um, wanting to impress some people.
Yeah,
Sometimes I'm up there and I'm, you know, it's I think it's constantly changing. But I do think that I when I'm on stage, I think I try to respect the song and everybody else's time.
yeah,
So I can't think of very many shows where I wasn't almost fully invested.
yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say I've never seen you not give like an A1 performance. You know what
I
I mean? Like it's just
appreciate that.
like it's like every time I see you, I'm like, that's better than the last. You know what I mean?
That's
And
awesome. Thank you.
which goes back to, you've mentioned him a few times in this podcast, Corey Brannon.
Yeah.
The first time I saw you live, Corey Brannon was on that bill with Good Old War and the honorary title.
Yeah.
So ever since that day, I mean, I think I guess that was the first time we really interacted, and it was a small, like I guess it was a small venue in North Carolina, I guess it was, yeah, so that was the first time I had actually even heard Corey Brannon's work. Really, even Good Old War, I kind of didn't know much, but like I love the honorary title. What is one of your, I guess like you've toured with lots of people, but like if you could put together a lineup of people to go tour with, like dream lineup, so we'll put you as the opener, then you get a feature and like a headliner. Like what two artists would you love to go experience like 8 weeks on the road?
Yeah, no, it's great. I'm trying to think of like people that aren't like personal friends, because like you know the goal is for me and everybody else that's in my little camp down in the trenches working for us all to, you know, get there. I'm trying to think of like heroes that I'd love to just, be on the road with. Man, if Gaslight Anthem would become a band again,
Yeah.
that would be wonderful. And
By the way, you should do. I was gonna say. I think their drummer Benny Horowitz. He does a podcast too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's I think he does two of them. He did one with he was doing it's like going off track. It was with Jonah Bear for a while, and then he did another one that was like sports related. But like but yeah, he's a funny dude. So
hell yeah. Okay.
I love Gaslight Anthem. They're great.
Dude, yeah, they're great. And I guess, man, probably the Lawrence Arms. I mean, they're always my, they're just, I know our genre different, awesome. But holy smokes, they're so good. Yeah, those would be my two, I guess. Gaslight and the Lawrence Arms.
Well, that's awesome. And that might be the same answer for this next one. So I wrote it down. I know a lot of people, obviously, they cover artists that they have a personal connection to, or a song that they have a personal connection to, or somebody that they admire. Roles reverse. Out of the blue, someone sends you in your email MP3 of someone covering your song. Who would be the person that you would hope or be the most impressed that, like, man, I would love to hear someone do that, my song? Like, you'd be most honored to have.
Huh. Yeah, that's a great question. Man. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Like the Lawrence Arms doing
I'd like to hear
vodka soda.
Yeah. No, I'd like to hear I'd like to hear Ed Helms get out his banjo and really, really learn a tune.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'm sure it'd be better a cappella, but I'd like to hear Ed Helms do something.
That'd be hilarious. That'd be great, actually. Not the answer I was expecting, but great all in all. So yeah, so that's, I mean, like, I guess, like, we've obviously talked a lot about music. Is there, one of the questions I did have was, when you're not doing music, obviously you've mentioned reading and all that kind of stuff, which also, I guess, kind of feeds back into your music because, the literary aspect. Is there anything that, like, would be unexpected for people that, I guess, just know your music, to, if you were like, I love doing this, like, whatever it is, like, is there anything that's, like, unexpected, or anything you have, like, a hidden talent at, like?
I think everybody's seen every talent I have, so not much there. Yeah, I don't know. I'm like a control freak, like, to the max, and like painfully neurotic. So I really enjoy little things like I enjoy like super little things. I enjoy cleaning out my email. I enjoy taping down cables at shows. I enjoy changing my guitar strings. I enjoy alphabetizing my record collection.
That's awesome.
Like I enjoy stuff like that. I think that's like the obsessive compulsive part of me, and it's just like super analytical. Yeah, I'm like that for sure.
I mean, that's not a bad thing to do in your spare time, I guess. You're like, some people are like, I love cleaning, and you're like, that's not a bad one, I guess.
Yeah. I enjoy it. I really do.
Oh, that's hilarious. So with that being said, I do want to definitely dive into the funding the future stuff, because I find that, so the other podcast that I do that I produce is with athletes, or one ex-athlete, one that's like kind of on the verge of getting ready to be at the end of his career. And a lot of they do on there, they obviously talk sports, but they also talk like financial freedom on that podcast as well. And like setting yourself up, because they earn all of their earnings in a small little window, and they have to live off that for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And so like that kind of came into my life, all of that kind of stuff, through like skateboarding, and guys like that are on my list, like Mikey Taylor, who also like, financial freedom, even though they're an athlete. So seeing you start doing this kind of came in around the same time. Can you explain a little bit of like what that does for people who don't know what it is?
Yeah.
And then also, because I think it's a really like awesome thing that I've said for a long time, schools should be kind
Yeah,
of doing for some
100%.
kids. So
Yeah, so the organization is Funding the Future. Gooding started it. It's a nonprofit. We go into high schools and middle schools all across the country, do like a full show, like a concert for the students, and then do a presentation on financial literacy. We're going into schools that there's no classes for financial literacy usually, and it's just kind of not talked about. I went to Missouri public schools. I remember one time we talked about balancing a checkbook. It's like, who even has checks anymore? So the stuff even we were talking about when I was in high school was not relevant. And Gooding says something that I think really sums up, what FTF is. And it's like, he did an interview one time and they're like, you play rock and roll. Shouldn't you be like getting drunk and throwing TVs out of hotel windows? And he's like, I think the most rock and roll thing is every kid in this country getting a fair chance. And that's what financial literacy gives to kids is, I mainly talk about in my speech, lessons I've learned, mistakes I've made. And it's kind of like, this is what I did, so don't do that. Because, if you start thinking about money at an early age and start understanding that it's a tool that can get you where you want to go faster in life. If I had started looking at my career and what I was doing as a small business when I was 17 years old, when I first started touring full time, things would be different, So it's just trying to go around and talk to young people and say, you're young and you don't think this applies to you right now, but I promise if you'll listen for a second, figure out what your credit score is. Know that. Do that right now. It's just little things like that hopefully we can instill in young people and get them where they want to go.
Yeah, I think it's such an awesome awesome thing. And I've watched a couple of like the teaser videos or like trailer videos. I'm assuming Kevin probably makes some of those. Yeah. Does a awesome job. And so like really cool. And then it always brings me, the first time I saw it, it brought me back to the first show, the date that I had with my wife. That was our first date. You played What to Make. And before that, you actually like went on this little, like, I wouldn't say rant, but you had like a 2-minute thing, but you were basically like telling these younger kids, cause it was a younger audience, like, like high school, like is going to come and go. Like you're younger than you've ever been. Like you can achieve anything. Everybody treat each other right. Like it kind of was like, I was like, and when you did it at that show, I remember telling my wife, I was like, Carter, like it really has his stuff together. Like in a sense of like, he thinks longer term than I think a lot of people his age. And so then to see you doing that, I was like, it's like a perfect fit. Like I was like, that awesome, makes so much sense. Like, and that's part of the reason why, like, I absolutely love you as a human being. I think like a lot of people, this podcast is called Swiss Army Man podcast because like I'm really like good at a lot of things. I'm not great at anything, but like I'm multifaceted, and that's kind of like a weird way of saying that. And then it's also like obviously a nod to Dashboard Confessional, who's like one of my favorite bands. But that is how I see you. I see you obviously like you're doing this thing in music, and it's like it's so like inspiring that you're like following your dreams, but you also have like you're also like I've had conversations with you about stuff that has nothing music related, and like you're well versed and you're like knowledgeable, and you have like an opinion that you can tell is like based in like I've done the research and I've gone through it. I'm not just saying it to say it. Like like it's really like for me you're like one of the most complete human beings I think I've ever met. Like
I appreciate
in that form. So so that's obviously one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, because I think you do so much that like I'm constantly impressed by watching you from afar, and like having met you the first time, I was like, just as a musician, I was like, oh, I love your music. And then very quickly it became like Carter's like a full blown, like awesome human being. Like,
I appreciate that.
And so like it's, I'm very lucky to call you friend. Like that's for sure. So, I was trying to think of any of the other, I think we've randomly hit like every single question that I had for the most part. Yeah. The one question I did think of while we were on here, and I noticed, because I'm a nerd me and my wife are both nerds about music. And like, so I'm the kid that would sit in front, like back when it was tapes and vinyl and, even CDs, and I would open the stuff up and I would see who wrote songs and who did this and who did that.
Yeah.
And I've noticed recently, my kids love obviously modern music, but they love a lot of modern country as well. And I noticed that a lot of modern country is written by guys that kind of like came up in the genre that you started in. And so like,
Yeah.
you know, you see like a Jimmy Robbins or like, I totally drawing blanks on other ones, but there's like other ones that I've seen. And like, is that something that like at some point you would be thinking about doing, like writing songs for other people to put on their records? Or
yeah, it's, you know, it is crazy because there's a lot of working writers in Nashville that did come from that scene.
Yeah.
I'm friends with some of them, and it's just it's funny. You know, I'm always down to do things that are creative and also successful, because, you know, there's some people in this town making a lot of money writing those country songs. The thing that I don't think most people realize is how difficult that is.
Yeah.
You know, you hear a song by whoever it is. I got a buddy that writes a lot of Blake Shelton stuff, and you hear it and you're like, oh my gosh, that's simple. That, you know, they took one phrase that you've heard your entire life and made a song around it. And, you know, you get down with a pen and paper and you start trying to replicate what that is.
Yeah.
It's part of its simplicity is unbelievably difficult.
Yeah.
'Cause I've written some songs, you know, with some of those guys, and it's tough. It's way more work. I think what I do is a little easier because I am able to say, I'm going to be wildly specific, and it's going to be, but with the country genre, it's the door is a lot wider, and, you know, a lot more people have to get in there. So that's a tough thing to do. I'm open to do it. And I have done some. I've written some on Music Row for sure.
Sweet.
Thankful for those opportunities. Not super focused on it right now, but what they do is it's a tough thing.
It is. It's funny because like the aperture has to be so wide, but it also you have to say something that actually matters for people to care. Yep. So it's like so hard to like bend into that. I know, like the one I was blanking on was and I guess it's not a songwriter. I'm sure he does write songs. But now I just drew the blank. The guy who plays for Dan and Shay. Why am I not?
Justin,
yeah.
Yeah, man, he's coming to my house tomorrow. We're recording some stuff together, and we've written together. He's my buddy. He's texting me right now. I can see it on my computer.
It's funny because like my kids love Dan and Shay. Like they're like they like that, you know, they fell in love with that tequila song or whatever. Yeah. And then like we were watching live videos because we do that all the time. My son's 3 and he sings songs fully, and like that's how he learned how to talk, really, just listening to songs. Yeah. So I've watched like live videos, and I'm like, I know that guy playing guitar right there, and they're like, my kids are like, no, you don't. I was like, I have a picture of me and Carter in my wallet that he took on like a Polaroid, and so it's funny to see like a lot of people from that world kind of.
Well, and their drummer too, Andrew, was the drummer of Rocket to the Moon.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Drummer, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's a small world out here in Nashville, Tennessee.
Well, it's so funny because it's like, man, it's like I love music so much, and it's like it's good to see like that there's a continued avenue even past. And I think the reason I asked that question is because I love like your music just like from a written aspect. Like if you just read the lyrics, and I think that it would translate obviously once you're done well past your, you know, like touring days and all that kind of stuff. I think like you obviously are going to be a career musician, and that's awesome.
Thank you.
That's a sweet thing to know that like your friend's going to do some awesome, even more awesome stuff than they've already done. So
I appreciate that.
Speaking of that, I'll ask you like a couple other awesome things that I know randomly. What is one of your favorite things that you've ever had happen on stage that wasn't during your show? That like maybe is like you were there for, like, I know during that Bamboozle Fest, like I remember like you were joking with me, like you were like almost like that 10 years back thing, you were like, the lead singer of Third Eye Blind is wearing my sunglasses on stage, like like random. And I think like at some point during that, like I think Hanson was on that tour, and like you guys all sang on stage. Like what's like one of the things that you're like when you have kids or you know, have great grandkids or whatever that is like in your life, like that you'll be like, I one time did this. And
Yeah.
then,
Oh man. You know, all those Never Shout tours, we would always hop out on stage with each other. So that was great. And then, you know, I will always remember when I was on tour with the Good Old War, uh, we all sang "Look at Miss Ohio" Gillian Welch
oh,
song
that's awesome.
together. So that was one of my favorite things for sure.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I love the Good Old War. They're like,
Yeah.
they're I've definitely listened to them a lot more since like that first time seeing you with them.
Yeah.
And then I always love the fact that like the reason like because someone stole your guitar and the reason you got it back was because of the peg that you
yes.
That's a random thing you do and you're
Yes.
like, man, I should mean nothing, but at some point it helps you identify something.
Yes.
So.
It's small world, man.
So I've kept you long enough, so we'll get down to the last one. What is time for you to ask the question for the next guest, and we'll either both answer it or I'll answer it.
I ask a question
whatever.
of the next
guest.
Okay.
And I have no clue who the next guest is on this point. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but I have no clue at this point.
Man, I guess my question is, what is the last thing that you either listened to or read, or what's the last thing that just made you stop for a second and appreciate the what it was, what was happening at that moment? You know, Kurt Vonnegut is one of my favorite writers, and he says, when something's good, you should stop what you're doing and acknowledge how good it is. And I'm looking at some of my books right here. Now, man, maybe I don't have it anymore. Maybe I loaned it somewhere. Oh yeah, right here. This Blood Meridian. I read this for the first time during quarantine, and it was tough because it's just so violent and so sad. But you know, when I was close to the end, you know, when most of the pages were in my left hand, I had this moment where I was like, this is the most wonderful piece of literature I've ever read.
Yeah.
And it just, that's the most recent, and this is months ago, but most recent thing that I was involved in that was a creative thing that made me stop and go, oh my goodness, like I just experienced something. Like, so I guess that's my question for whoever's next is,
okay,
what's the last thing that you experienced that made you step out? You know, I think it's important as people to every once in a while try to like sit in the seat of your own movie or step back and be a witness to you. I try to look at myself every once in a while and like I'm watching myself in a movie and make sure that I'm doing things that I could root for that person for, you know? So I think those moments are important. So yeah, that's my question. What's the last thing that made you stop and kind of look around and take inventory of maybe where you were, where you're going and where you are right at that moment?
That's a great question. That's an awesome question. And if I had to answer it, actually one of the things I've been thinking about the whole time, but that for me, the one would be your obviously Corey Brandon lyric, the
magic one,
magic. That actually really does, like that one is probably something that I'll be thinking about that tomorrow while I'm doing something.
Yep, absolutely.
But like before that, I was trying to think of I guess I can't really like explain the exact, but I just listened to and this kind of cliche. I listen to a lot of audiobooks too while I work, but I listened to Kevin Hart's new one. It's called The Decision.
Yeah.
And it's basically like, because like he like broke his back in a car accident, so stuff like that. And like there's just like a lot of times in that where you're like, man, like I should not give other people the ability to like make my decisions. Like I factor in a lot of other people's like thoughts, and instead and a lot of times it's taken me off of where I thought I initially thought, and I really got to trust. It actually goes back to a Dashboard, well, not Dashboard Lyrics, but Twin Forks, his like side band. They have a song where he says, "I trust my gut," because and basically the lyrics like my gut's always right. Like, and it's like that's the thing that like I heard recently is it kind of made that book kind of made me really think of that in my head, was like, yeah, my gut is usually right. Like if
Yeah.
it's staying the course on that while other people don't see where the end result is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like that was probably the last thing that really made me like think, but other than the lyric, which now I'm
Yeah.
gonna think
No,
about.
I love that. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Well, Carter, I appreciate you having me, or having you coming on, for me having you on my podcast. I want to make sure everyone can find you, because I think everybody should hear your music.
Thanks.
So where is the best places for people to find you at?
Yeah, just Spotify. It's just Carter Hulsey, or Instagram. It's just my name on all that stuff. Yeah,
Okay.
Super easy.
And then in the post edit, that'll be below his little box. So I'm gonna put
Hell yeah.
So
brother, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Man, thanks for being on. I appreciate it.
Let's do this again. I'll have a record coming out, and so I'll send you some stuff, and
sure.
And you let me know what you think.
We'll definitely have you back on.
Yeah.
So I'll sign off on that, and then I'm gonna talk to you after I sign off. So
yeah.
Thanks everybody for listening. Go check out Carter, and thanks for spending time with us.